Hi, this is Tim with rcnoob.com. Today we're going to do a project unveiling, and here it is. Ta-da! The BatBomber project. And I have mentioned this project before in a previous video when we took a look at the Boomerang Type E and Type I shocks from Boom Racing. Those are on this machine. They were a big part of this project, and there are a couple other visual elements that are different from a stock Axial RR10 Bomber. You may have seen those already, but we'll go over those real quick. There really wasn't much that I did to this vehicle outside of a lot of body work. The 20-turn motor, which you may have seen the video for, that upgrade I would have done regardless of turning this thing into a quasi Batmobile. But really, when I saw the Bomber driving around indoors and outdoors, it had a certain look to it. It had a certain um, aggressive stance to it that I liked, and actually the more I saw it, the more I felt it mimicked the Tumbler from the Dark Knight trilogy, and gave that some more thought. And I'm a huge Batman fan. I've been a Batman fan since 1989. And seeing as how I'm only 36, that's a good chunk of my life. But I've always been drawn to Batman. He's been my favorite superhero, and between seeing the look of that vehicle, I guess the vibes it was giving off, in how quickly these ideas came to me as far as little visual updates to the Bomber that I could do. It was a project that I wanted to take on and see what I could do. So it had a couple of firsts for me. It was my first time working with styrene. I had not worked with that material until now. Now, having worked with it, I must say it's an incredibly fun material to work with. I'm looking forward to doing more with this project. This, I think, is phase one. I do have some additional items that I'm going to be crafting down the road, but I wanted to get this put back together, and I wanted to be able to drive it now that weather is doing much better than it had been the last couple months here in Wisconsin. But back to this machine, it was a bunch of firsts for me. First time with styrene, first time using Boom Racing shocks. I've used Boom Racing wheels before and a couple other Boom Racing products, but it was my first time with Boom Racing shocks. Nothing against the shocks that were stock with the vehicle. They just didn't match the theme that I was going for, and I believe I may have mentioned that before, or I've definitely written about it before. But these Boom Racing Boomerang shocks they're beautiful, and they work well. They work incredibly well, and they really add to the overall visual look of this machine. Again, I was going for something that was more Tumbler-ish, Tumbler-esque, not really the sleek Batmobile that you've seen throughout other movies, but it's just something fun, and that's really for me what the hobby's about and what this build was about. Just making something fun that I can go out and have a good time with. So what did I all do to this vehicle to turn it into the BatBomber? Well, first thing was I bought a secondary set of panels, the stock Lexan panels for the RR10 Bomber, and spray painted them a flat black. And then I hit them with a flat black clear coat just to really make them as durable as possible. The spraying was done on the top and the bottom because these were pre-painted panels. I could not spray from the underside and have that be it. So I'm foreseeing the fact that I'll have to repaint these a couple times as I drive it and as I do things with it. Probably roll it a few times. I did have an incident this weekend where I rolled it on a wooden surface, and Batman himself, who is in the vehicle behind the wheel, or, well, there's no steering wheel yet, but he's encountered a little bit of damage as well. So I think the first thing I did was updating the panels, getting them matte black, and that really helped set the tone for this machine. Next was taking a look at what I could do to beef it up, give it more of an aggressive Batman-esque flair. The shocks definitely were a huge component in that. Colors that I chose were the gunmetal gray finish. It's a beautiful finish, and even if this thing didn't have an overall gothic look to it or a menacing look to it, those would be a beautiful addition to any RC vehicle. But again, I went with the Type E and the Type I shocks. These additional shocks in the back are purely for looks, but they are serving a bit of a performance purpose as well. The Bomber out of the box is very twisty. There's a lot of torque that goes through the chassis when you hit the throttle, and definitely with that 20-turn motor, I was getting a lot of torque and a lot of body twist. Not as much as with the 35-turn motor, but right off the bat, if you punch the throttle, there was a good amount of body twist. And then not only were you getting the rear end body twist, but it would also lift the front end off the ground as well. Adding the secondary set of shocks not only looks cool, but it serves a purpose to where it stiffens up the rear end, and I don't get as much or any body roll or body twist when I'm under acceleration. So again, it served a purpose, not only just looking cool, but it helps the performance a little bit and keeps the front wheels on the ground, which is great. I had to go through a little bit of modification with the shocks. I didn't quite pay attention to the length when I purchased these, so that I ended up getting an extended, I believe it was the 120 millimeter shaft. Rebuilt the shocks, and then even then it wasn't long enough. I wanted to get the full amount of shock travel and just rear end suspension travel and droop on this back end, and it was still a little bit short, so I ended up getting a piece of a link, just a chain link, or a chain drive link really, and adding that to this component to give it a little additional extension. And I was a little worried that this would be really loose and flop around and might actually cause damage as the vehicle is moving around. But it's actually, there is a little bit of movement, I'll say that, but it does stay in place quite nice, and I don't see much movement now just pushing down on it or when I'm driving it. So it's very sturdy, very stable. So performance-wise, chassis-wise, those were the main adjustments and enhancements that I made to turn this Axial RR10 Bomber into the BatBomber. So then the next step is, what do you do to add armor? What do you do to add this menacing look that I was going for? And that was using styrene. I could have used a number of materials. I hadn't used styrene before. I'd seen a number of people using this material for a variety of builds, and I wanted to give it a shot. It is a fun product, and not really a product, but it's a fun material to work with. And I really enjoyed working with it and seeing what I could do to manipulate it. Originally, this larger piece was the only piece that I had created. I cut that out, had it spray painted, put it on here, and it was missing something. So I went with more of a layered armor look. You'll see here, again, kind of playing off of the looks of the Tumbler from the Batman movies, and even Batman's armor, the armor that this figure that I'm using. Pull him out, we'll give you a shot of the interior. This is the Arkham Knight Batman character, figurine, action figure. Not a doll, that's for sure. But he's got a couple layers of armor, and I wanted to mimic that as much as I could with this machine as well. So layering the styrene to create that layered armor effect was definitely something that I was going for. And it worked out quite well. I ended up getting some slightly longer screws for some of these parts where I was layering a few layers of styrene. The styrene that I'm using is a 0.04 thickness, so it's probably double the thickness of the original Lexan. It's still durable. It's got a little bit of bend in it. Probably has a lot of bit of bend in it, judging by the fact that, like I said, I rolled this thing this past weekend. No damage to the body. A little bit of scuffing up on some of the upper portions of the cage and some of the edges of the Lexan. Batman did suffer a little bit of damage. If you've seen pictures of this figure before, if you've seen this character before, you may notice that his ears are a little taller. He somehow got his head out of the vehicle and onto the wood and snapped off portions of his ears, so we had to touch him up a little bit and file him down, but overall I think he looks pretty good. Anyway, back to the bomber. So really the layering of the material was easy to achieve using the slightly longer screws, made mounting it very easy. And then I was set with the challenge of what do I do with the interior. Now I had picked up that figurine earlier in the year. I wanted to use him. I really was hoping to do something with the interior that wouldn't be too involved, but I needed to get those drivers out of there. I needed to get that molded interior either modified or pulled out completely. And after much debate and much sketching and much just a lot of thought went into that interior, maybe more thought went into the interior and how I was going to handle that challenge versus everything else, I turned to styrene. And styrene not only is easy to cut and easy to shape in that method through cutting and scoring, but it is, I'd say, fairly easy to mold if you heat it up and bend it and form it properly. So the interior of this BatBomber, I'll try to give you the best view as I can, is all custom, and it's really comprised of 3 main pieces of styrene. So the first thing that I did was I measured up the dimensions of the original interior. I wanted to get the dashboard the same depth in and the same length down. So I did that, and then heated up that portion here, heated up the bend. From that point, after I had the dimensions down, I heated up the parts where I was going to bend it, bent it against a straight angle with a little bit of a, not 90-degree angle as you can see, but it did the trick. It did bend a little awkwardly in some parts, but after I got it all bolted down and screwed in, you can't notice that, which is great. I'm very, very happy with how that turned out. The second piece that I created was this back panel. That's what Batman sits against. He doesn't really have a seat yet. That's phase 2. But I wanted to do something, again, to mimic the back portion, the back panel that was in here originally. So I created that, made the bends that I needed, and then after that I created just a square cutout portion that is then screwed in with 6 screws. I did need to raise up this portion a little bit so it does have a little bit of a lip, just to clear the motor. But other than that, not much else went into the interior build for this machine. I'm very happy with how it turned out. Again, having it have been the first time I've ever worked with styrene, I really didn't know what to expect, and it came away with it with a huge appreciation for the material itself, and I'm really anxious to work with this material again. So, as you can see, there are a few things missing. Batman doesn't have a steering wheel. He doesn't have a proper seat. Those are all phase 2. I'm still fleshing out those ideas, but for now, Batman sits in here nice and tidy. It takes a little bit to get him in, but once he's in, he looks good. He sits good. For the most part, he's fairly stable, save for a few rollovers. But it's a cool looking build. I'm really happy with it. It's phase 1. I've got additional phases that I want to be adding as I go through and as I own this vehicle longer, but I want to still keep it fun and keep it able to bash a little bit. The other addition that I made was adding some lights. So I put an LED bar underneath this front bumper. It's a little on the loose side, but that's fine. There are 4 total LEDs in there. I'll light those up in a moment. And I did put an LED into this dash panel. Um, the dash, I wish I could get the camera in there to show you the full detail. There's a decal that I created off of a screenshot from Batman Arkham Knight video game. It's a map of Gotham City, and then I overlaid a piece of plexiglass over that to give it a little more depth and to give it a more realistic look. And then within there is a blue flashing light, or a blue flashing LED, which I can control from the 3rd channel of my Tactic controller. So enough talking about the lights. Let's light this puppy up and show you what it looks like. Okay, so we've got the lights lit up. And that's with 2 lit up. I'm sorry, they're all 4 are lit up, but I've got 2 different brightness levels set up. Again, controlled by the 3rd channel on my receiver. And we'll spin it around, give you a look on the in. Whoa! And we'll take a look at that inside. So again, that light is not on all the time. Then we turn it on, and you can see it a little bit in there. Just a nice little, fun little thing that I wanted to throw in to this build. So let's go get the lights on and wrap up this review. So that's going to do it for my project wrap-up review for the BatBomber. Again, this started off life as an Axial RR10 Bomber, ready to run vehicle, and with a little bit of imagination, a little bit of styrene, and a lot of black paint, this is what I ended up with. I'm really happy with how this turned out. I've had it out for a run or 2 with the new shocks. I hadn't run it really hard until this past weekend with everything on it, and I'm really, really impressed with how well it handles. It still handles tremendously. It's just a joy to look at. It's really cool to watch it drive over some bumps and rough terrain, and just see the attitude of the vehicle and just see how aggressive it looks. It was aggressive to start off with, and now it just looks like a monster. So I'm really happy with how that all turned out. As far as phase 2, I guess my plans are to add more armor. I've got some plans for a back piece, for adding some additional armor, possibly creating a seat for Batman to sit in, something to cradle him a little bit better. As it works right now, he's good. He's sitting there. But as I found out this weekend, he does have the tendency to possibly fly out should the machine flip over. So I want to curb that as much as I possibly can. Outside of that, I think this project is fairly done. I don't see much of a phase 3 necessity. So I think phase 2, once I get those few pieces crafted and once I get that idea done, that's going to be it for this project and for this build. I'll say again, I hadn't really done a video review or full video review giving my thoughts of the RR10 Bomber from Axial, but I love this machine. I can't say enough great things about it. I will say that getting into the interior, and I've covered this in previous videos, getting to the interior is a pain. But if you plan ahead and figure out what you need to do while it's apart, it's not that bad. I had this thing ripped apart fairly well to get this custom interior in. I had to put it together in 3 separate pieces. I couldn't put all 3 pieces together and then shove it in. But you know, we worked with it. We got it in. It looks great. I'm happy with it. I'm thrilled with it. I've got the biggest grin on my face whenever I drive this vehicle, and even out of the box stock, I had the biggest grin on my face driving it. I think Axial definitely has the potential to build off of this platform, and they could turn this into a platform. And I'm a huge fan of platforms. The SCX10, yes, I know they've got model after model of this. Clearly not this one, but the SCX10 line. They have stretched that so far, and they've done so much with it. But I love that. I love the fact that you've got so many different entry points for a vehicle, and I think they could do something similar with this. And I hope they do something similar with this. But even beyond that, I think as a platform, if you wanted to create something custom, if you wanted to create something just, out of the box, outside the box, thinking wise, that's just fun and, just creative, and it's something that you want to build and you want to own, you can do that, and I hope that they do more with this vehicle. Coming out with a kit version, I think, would be the next logical step for this machine. Okay, that's enough rambling. I love this vehicle. I love the Bomber. It's a tremendous machine. If you have one, you probably know how great it is. If you're on the fence about getting one, take a good hard look at it, and it is one that I think you'll have hours of fun with, if not years of fun with, if you don't bash on it too hard. But it's a tremendous machine. I can't say enough great things about it, and it allowed me to build something really cool and really custom, and I love that. So until next time, this has been Tim with rcnoob.com. Again, if you like this video, please do like it on YouTube. If you haven't yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do go ahead and do that. That is very much appreciated. For a full write-up on this build, do check out rcnoob.com. If I don't have the write-up out right away, it will be up in due time. Yeah, I'm going to go charge the batteries up, and I want to go drive this. So until next time, guys, you take care.